Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 91st Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our discussion forums twice monthly to demonstrate civil, productive, open-minded discussion. Today, our panel is going to revisit a topic that we discussed in August, and that is the Electoral College. Our panel, beginning on my left, is Patty Haskins, retired math teacher and member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Jerry Ritzman, partner in Ritzman Pharmacies. And on his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired research chemist. Patty, for the second time since 1888, we elected a president who lost the popular vote. Has this caused you to rethink how you felt about the Electoral College since we discussed this topic in August?
This election was interesting because I think it was what's brought so much attention is the fact that Clinton received, it's up to like 2.5 million more votes than Trump did. I still haven't decided where I fall on this. And I was kind of in that position, I think, the last time. We have to look back at why this was set up with the Electoral College. And the founders, when they drew up the Constitution, Hamilton and Madison decided that they very honestly couldn't trust democracy in this case and felt that they couldn't trust the voters to make the decision on who the president would be, which is quite interesting. They were also concerned that a majority would come along and they would make all the decisions on who the president was, and the minority, and in some ways the smaller states, would not have a voice. So they set up this Electoral College. And I think the way they originally set it up was that you got 2 electorates for your 2 senators, and then the number of other electorates was based upon how many congressmen you had, how many people from the House of Representatives. Maine, I think, had and the smallest number you could end up with was 3.
Yes.
And even Washington, D.C. had 3, even though they don't have members in the House and the Senate. And they felt that this way as well, it would help the smaller states, and they would carry, a little more weight than maybe or more weight proportionately than the large states. We fast forward to now, and in some ways this system has become a bit antiquated, and we've seen the problems that have arisen with the difference in the popular vote and the Electoral College vote. One way that this could be corrected would be by the individual states addressing how their electors vote. At present, I think it's about half of the states require the electors to vote for the person that received the majority.
It's only half?
It's maybe a little more than half, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Quite a few of them don't. Now, is it a case that they almost always vote for that candidate? Yes, they do. The one thing that's even more interesting is the fact that the states have all decided, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska, that whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets all of the electoral votes. And there have been some moves to change that, and that actually could be done by states. But the states that would have an advantage on that aren't, with the Electoral College the way it is, certainly aren't going to make that change. So we'd still possibly have the problem. Otherwise, to alter it would require a constitutional amendment, which requires 3/4 of the states.
And would take 5 years.
Yeah, at least. And I don't see anything helping.
And the party that called for it would be on the other side of the fence by the time the constitutional amendment was ratified.
Yeah. So, do I think it could use some tweaking to, come up to date? Yeah, yes, I do. If you look at like Wyoming, I think they get 1 electorate for every 171,000 people. You go to California, and that electorate represents 3-4 times as many people. Yeah. So you're not equally represented. Now, do I think that changing it would change the election? I'm not sure that it would. And this might surprise you, but I going to quote Donald Trump here because he came out with the statement, and I thought it was a...
God, I wish Bryan was here.
I know. There was a little bit of hyperbole for it. He said that had the election been based on the popular vote, he would have won anyway, yada, yada, yada. Well, I don't know about that, but he would have campaigned differently.
Yes.
And both of them would have.
Yes.
And, they both knew the rules going in, and they campaigned according to those rules. So just because one person has more popular vote than the other doesn't mean that the election was stolen from the other person. If you switch to the popular vote, then the candidates would go to all of the states, even the ones where they know they can't win, because they want to try to increase votes because they know those votes won't count. Will count then. Presently, they avoid those states because it doesn't help them if they know they can't win. Why spend your time and money and resources in those states? And that was the comment that Trump made. So just saying that we need to change it because of the present election, that might be a little rash at this point.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Very simply, and John, do you want to put that cartoon up on the screen? There's the states.
It's backwards.
Without the Electoral College. That's the influence of the states without the Electoral College. This was in the Plain Dealer Sunday. You've got 5 states, maybe 6 states are going to determine who the president is.
Really?
Yep.
That's a different arithmetic than what I came up with. I had 11 states.
So all of those, the ones that aren't in the purple, green.
Well, California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, those are in Florida. Did I say Florida?
Yeah.
Those are about the only states you'd have to.
So that would eliminate Ohio and Michigan and all
of
that. Possibly Pennsylvania. But I'm saying it would oversize those. And so not only in national politics, but that's what's happening within the political parties right now also.
Interestingly enough.
The Democratic Party right now is struggling with that the people in the heartland are not having the influence within their own party. And it's becoming a coastal party. And so that's...
Interestingly enough.
That's an easy way out. That's my answer.
3 of those states plus Massachusetts
were
totally ignored by the candidates this time around because their states were not even in play. They were decided. Ron, where are you coming from?
Well, we probably should go popular vote. There's 2.3 million more of us than there are of you. Well, there's certainly a bandwagon. There's certainly a bandwagon.
Changing rapidly, though, I think.
A bandwagon out there rolling along to get rid of the Electoral College, and I'm not ready to jump on that yet. It's a gnarly question, and I don't know where I'm at with it now. It's certainly changing. As you say, it takes a constitutional amendment, which takes a long time, and it's not to be entered into lightly. Not only difficult to do, but it's a serious situation. And we have a number of amendments in place that could help on that. The 25th, for example, ways of getting rid of the president once we have him or her. I suppose that the Republicans, or at least the more conservative one, would say, well, the Electoral College worked the way it should. We didn't get a demagogue in there. Mm-hmm. We didn't elect Hillary. So your point of view. But Patty, you brought up a lot of points about the founding of the Electoral College, as Madison and Monroe particularly were the authors of this and what they thought about it. And I looked up a few statements here. Decision we made without tumult and disorder would be one, you think, and we sure a presiding officer have both ability and good character. That might be a way of getting rid of your president that you didn't like, that it would be proves to have. And the 25th Amendment allows for that. There's several stages where the vice president and the Congress, if they think the president is not doing a good job, they simply request that he be removed, and the vice president becomes the acting president. The president can come back at that and say, okay, it's really intended for things like the Reagan situation where the president is incapacitated medically. But it could be applied for anything.
Are you talking about the 25th Amendment?
25th Amendment.
Could you kind of summarize what that means,
Well,
what it is?
As I understand it, and it's a biased thing because all I know about it without reading the amendment is a rant by Keith Olbermann, and obviously suspect for many ways. But Keith points out, he says there's a 4-stage process here. And he quoted some of the language. The Congress or their people that they trust to do so can essentially bring suit against the president with the Congress and remove him from office or remove his.
This is the impeachment.
Not impeachment. It's not
yeah,
impeachment.
It doesn't sound like it.
Impeachment is not. There's no impeachment. There's no criminal charges or anything. It's just that they don't feel he is able to do the job.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Able to do the job. I said it was intended, I think, for the Reagan era when Reagan was shot, and for a number of periods, Alexander Haig wanted to take over, if you remember that situation.
Yes.
But then the president can come back and say, oh no, my medical tests or whatever prove that I'm perfectly capable of doing that, and he can come back and get it back. But then there's 2 other stages where they can counter that, and then the president can counter that, and eventually it winds up being the Congress that decides this. Again, are representatives who decide this of the president. And Madison and Rowe both thought that the office of president should be decided by a mixture of the popular and the federalist approach, and hence the Electoral College. But it's an gnarly situation, and there are ways in which I think it was 1834 to 1836 in that era where the states began to go to the winner-takes-all situation. It started with Virginia, a slave state. Where they said, well, we got the population here. We have one of the more highly populated states at the time, where the government began, if you will. And so that started, and the other states picked up on that pretty quickly.
Yeah, in the beginning, they had 20 electoral votes, and I think Pennsylvania did, and one other state that had 20. Every other states had less.
Yeah.
But Patty touched on it. We have an unequal distribution of power based on the fact that every state starts off with 2 votes because they get automatically 2 senators. I think there are 3 states then that only have 1 rep.
1 representative. Yeah. Wyoming, I think.
Dakotas,
I think Montana,
maybe, something like that.
But that doesn't sound like it might cause too much of a difficulty, but it certainly does. Somebody had figured out you take 5 states, those 3 that we just mentioned, and 2 others, and I don't remember which, and they have together 1/3 of the population of Florida. Mm-hmm. However, they have an equal representation in the Electoral College. So they have a huge advantage. And there is one proposition out there that I think that 8 states have already signed on to something called the National Popular Vote Movement, which means the state, and the Constitution permits them to do this, the state requires or allows their electoral voters to vote for whomever they want. Mm-hmm. And there is no consequences to voting against what the voters had asked for.
As I read what Madison and Rowe said too in their Federalist Papers, that was the intent. That was the intent. So they felt that these people would be insulated in some way from scurrilous popular opinion, But I'm not sure that this argument holds. We have mass communications. We have things going on all the time over the whole world. We have instant information, good information or bad information, and so that everybody is informed at all times if they want to be.
One of the reasons they did it was because they didn't feel that people knew enough.
They figured, the electors would be in the capital cities of the states, and they would have access to the best information, and be able. The state governments would be able to choose people who were sagacious, who would be able to make good decisions about this.
Yeah. Well, what the National Popular Vote Movement amounts to is that the state would then actually require the electors of their state to vote for the candidate who had the popular vote of the country. How do you feel about that?
I have mixed feelings on that. I would like to think that my vote is going to count, whereas as one of the votes it was counted for the candidate I vote for. That was not the case this year. So you feel a bit disheartened by that.
If this I don't know what to call it, if it was made law in Ohio that the Ohio electors would be required to vote for the candidate who got the national popular vote, Ohio would have voted for Hillary Clinton and she would have won.
Right.
I mean, in a number of states, which would have pretty much nullified the electoral college.
That just
I mean, it just means that would be one way to look at it. The other way is to eliminate the senators from the equation and just count the representatives, which would be a true reflection of the population.
Well, there are those that want to eliminate the electoral college altogether and not even use it. It should be just a vote. Wasn't there one congressman that was going to introduce a bill right after the election to that effect?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it died, or they haven't done anything with it yet. But you do have concerns about that.
Something of it, the disproportionate nature of the influence is interesting. I saw a study here just recently where some computer whiz worked out an interactive map of the United States in which you're able to move a county from one place to another. And it turns out that if you move four counties between places like Illinois and Wisconsin, for example, you can throw the election the other way because of the electoral votes. You just move the county, and what does that do to the electoral vote too? And 4 counties.
I don't know. Realistically, I just don't see any change coming because I think there's so many mountains that have to be brought out. To get rid of the electoral college completely I don't think is going to happen. Could they tweak it though? Could they make some kind of change? I mean, and we've made changes before. I mean, originally senators were not elected; they were picked by the state legislatures.
One of the other things to consider: we've had 58 presidential elections in the history of this country, and only 4 of them had the winner of the popular vote lose. So the question is it really a big problem?
Well, I think because 2 of them were, with Al Gore and with Hillary Clinton.
Been recently,
Have been recent.
And there were none in the 20th century at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you see 2 now, and I also think what prompted, as I mentioned before, is the size or the margin of difference in the popular vote this time. It's not close. It's quite a bit.
Not like the Gore and Bush one at all. That was relatively small.
That was relatively
so one state
close.
was able to throw it.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about what the Supreme Court did, it doesn't matter at this point.
Didn't Kennedy have fewer popular votes than Nixon?
That is up in the air. Yeah, some people think.
Yeah, because you said not in the 20th century, but I thought in that election.
No, I think the officially no, that Kennedy had more votes than Nixon in 1960. But there are a lot of people who think that that's not really the way it worked out. You take away all the dead people and the cattle and all the other
vote early and all
votes that were there. Now, here's something to think about, though. With the Electoral College, now Jerry put up a graphic that showed 5 states. Well, I had 11 that you could win become president by winning 11 states.
Yeah.
And you could lose the election by winning 39.
Yeah. Now, the likelihood of those 11 states getting all 11 is quite low because of the California and Texas, although Texas is changing a little bit. You're not going to have people take both of those states, but I don't know.
Well, the likelihood of having a popular vote win or lose is pretty remote too.
Well, that's true.
But I know
You know,
there's so much emotion about this election. I've never known one that was so
emotional. You know, one of the other, I mentioned about the campaigning would have to change if you go away from the Electoral College and you have the presidential candidates having to go to every state. They'll start campaigning and do it for 4 years to make sure they get every place. I'm not sure, but what that wouldn't lengthen the whole campaign process.
It definitely would, and it would make running for, to my way of thinking, it would make running for president a much less desirable thing on the part of people who would be outstanding candidates.
Yeah.
When you think about what the two candidates did this time, they were in the air all the time, 5 cities a day. I mean,
For 2 years.
Now you throw in New York, California, Texas, Massachusetts into the mix. Now they'd really, it would become almost impossible.
And then the campaign has to pay for surrogates to go out there and go to all of those locations. And
I think
How
that
many different messages would they have to craft also?
oh my God.
oh, that's
Oh, yeah.
true too.
Really, it would be
Politicians are used to that.
Well, yeah.
Craft a message for anybody that's listening to them.
That's right.
Where did now? I know that Trump was really opposed to the Electoral College
until
Until
he
the
won.
first Tuesday after the first
Exactly,
Monday in
and now
November.
does anybody know where he stands right now on that, or what is the Republican take on that?
Oh, I think that his word now is that he actually won the popular vote.
Well,
so
yeah,
it
I heard
didn't
that.
matter. Yeah, I haven't heard him.
He'd have won it. Well, he actually did say he actually did win the popular vote.
If it hadn't been for all the cheating
The
and lying
millions
and, you
that
know.
he has provided no proof of, he can't list any specifics.
So how do you think the recounts are going to come out? Wisconsin is holding one apparently.
I don't think there's going to be a change.
No,
It's
there's
too
going to
much-
be one in
too much-
Michigan too, I think.
Michigan and Pennsylvania. The
I mean,
differences are a little too much.
Even the Democratic people in the Democrat Party are saying there probably won't be a change because there's never been a recount with the difference as big as these. So they don't think there'll be a change.
And I've heard a lot of complaining that Hillary is pushing it. Her campaign isn't pushing it. It's all Jill Stein. And what Clinton is doing is sending in lawyers to oversee it, which they should because it's an election involving them. The Trump campaign has also sent in lawyers. You don't hear that on many stations, but they're both doing what they should do. Just, you should watch over that recount. But, I mean, obviously Jill Stein's not going to win, but I don't think they're going to find any big change by it.
Moving a little bit away from the Electoral College, do you think that we have a problem in this country of not getting really good candidates to step up? Or is our media and our emotions too tied into the process to include really good candidates?
You've got to be willing to have the scrutiny that's on you
Yes.
right now.
And your entire family.
And your entire family. I mean, they'll go back and find that you stole a piece of candy from a candy store when you were 3 and make big headlines.
It's not true. I did not.
Yeah, and
Or the thing is too, is you may have made some error or misstep in the past that everybody does, but you won't be forgiven for that.
Inhale.
Yeah, you won't be forgiven for
you
that.
would never be allowed to change an opinion.
No.
And I think
You're wishy-washy.
intelligent people, investigate situations.
I'm not sure that that's a failing of the candidates, though, not being allowed to do that. And how do we know who's going to be a good candidate? Now, from my point of view, I think Obama made a pretty good president, and who would have really might not have thought so ahead of time. Certainly no perfection there, but
I agree.
no perfection. There's certainly weak spots, foreign policy and et cetera, but that you might not agree with or think it could have been stronger or taken a little different tack. But people tend to rise to the job, I think, a little bit. Even, you know, you're fond of pointing out, I think, all the accomplishments under Richard Nixon's regime. Yet the guy was not particularly an admirable character, personally.
I know, but what difference does that make if
But what difference does
you
that
got all
make,
those things done? You got the entire liberal agenda passed.
Right.
That's an interesting
So,
conversation.
you don't know. You don't know.
Well, and you have to have campaign finance reform too. I mean, if you're going to, right now the cost of running is so high, and if we extend the period, it's going to be more, and that only invites lobbyists to come in with their, provide money because you need it.
And we do have a three-part system here. You know, the executive is only one part, and failings there can be corrected by strengths in other places, and vice versa. So.
I'm often disturbed by the really good, high-quality candidates that just can't even seem to make it in New Hampshire. And Bill Richardson is one that comes into my mind. He is a Democrat who had been a mayor, a governor, an ambassador, a cabinet member. I mean, I've never seen anyone better qualified by experience than Bill Richardson.
Totally written off.
The last time he tried to run, he got 2% of the vote in the Iowa caucuses and just disappeared.
Well, many touted John Kasich as an excellent candidate this time
because
around.
of his background.
I'm not saying that I agree, but yes, but look, he got nothing.
Yeah, and it's it asks, begs the question, why do people vote for who they vote for? I don't understand why anyone, quite frankly, voted for either one of our candidates in the primaries. They would have been, there were 17 Republican candidates, and Trump was probably either 16th or 17th on my list, and Hillary wouldn't even have been on it. I think I'd have voted for O'Malley or somebody rather than Hillary, but be that as it may, I'd like to end with this quote from a Roman philosopher that I had never heard of before, and the pronunciation of his name is actually Epictetus. And he said, "What concerns me is not the way things are, but rather the way people think things are." And I hope I don't ever have to say that name again.